it with our students. It's very difficult teaching partition to students because this is the semester when I do it. So
Yeah.
I really jumped, at the opportunity when Xavier said, "Can you select a book?" And this really is up our street because I teach in a women's college and partition literature. So this
Yeah.
was something that would vibe well with them. This is not in the syllabus actually, but I suppose
Yeah.
at some point it will be. Yeah.
But
Very interesting you say that. I actually met and saw Chitra Divakaruni at the Jaipur Lit Fest. And person who launched her book was Sudha Murthy.
Okay.
And she made a point that it was a very nice launch. What do you say? The congratulations, and here's the book. But she said, there's a lot of women authors who are writing about partition. There was another lady, Amrita something, who wrote about the North India partition, Punjab, that
Yeah.
part. So she had written that, again, a very well appreciated book at the festival. I will send you the name later.
Okay. Sure.
But Sudha made a very good point. She says, at least the Bengalis and the Punjabis found a home, but nobody's written about the impact of the Sindhi community, the impact that was there on the Sindhi community, and they are actually scattered all over the world. And their Sindh, just this, for them doesn't exist, and nobody's written about the trials and tribulations of the Sindhi community. So she said, I hope one day somebody will write a book. I thought that was such a clever thought that Sudha put out there.
yeah, but there are no mainstream accounts, but there are several accounts published by, groups in local languages. Like my father-in-law was a writer. So there
Yeah.
are lots of these small accounts published, fiction published, but nothing of the stature of something that comes out at a national level.
Correct.
When
Correct.
you're looking at that, you also have to examine how maybe, certain communities have been sidelined,
Yeah.
marginalized, because, for several reasons. I don't
Yeah.
want to speak
Like,
it.
one doesn't understand why, right? Like, I have Sindhi friends, and they are, they've been living now, 3 generations have been living in Africa and things like that. But they're so interested in India, they're so connected, and it's just amazing how they retain their cultural identity in such a strong manner, and that connect to India is so large that I just feel that they really feel this loss a lot. They're constantly trying to connect with that loss, even generations later.
But it's also
So,
like they're like the Jews, because it's a
yeah,
community
a bit
that's
like the Jews,
highly
you're right.
dispersed,
Yeah, highly dispersed.
and then that doesn't give a cohesiveness for this kind of literature. They don't
Very
have a
true. Very
homeland.
true.
Punjabis have a homeland.
Very true.
When you think of Sindhi homeland, you think of Ulhasnagar
Yeah,
and Bombay. Where else?
yeah, where else?
All
And
over the
maybe
world.
similarly in Delhi somewhere, I don't know. Or
Yeah.
maybe more Mumbai.
There are pockets. Yeah,
Yeah.
Ulhasnagar, where you find a concentration,
Yes, exactly.
They're
Exactly.
all over the world, but not in
Yeah.
a specific place.
Yeah.
And you're right, there is this pining for Sindh, but Sindh
Yeah.
is only a kind of, mental
Wait,
construct.
Sindh now is kind of also distributed between Pakistan and India, isn't
Sure.
it? Like Punjab, but it never got a place of its own,
Yeah.
They never got a place of their own.
So shall we start, Brian?
Yeah, ready when you
This
are.
the month of February is always very special because in March we celebrate our birthday. So next month we are going to be some years old. I'll let you know that later on. So next month we have to celebrate. So I thought we could meet on Zalor Beach. So
lovely.
just pass on this message instead of just having a, Zoom session. Next month we meet at Zalor Beach and let's, let's shoot some balloons in the sky and, do something very special. And I hope everyone will come. So the host, the anchor of this particular session is Brian, and I'm very happy to give it over to him because he selected the book. Yeah, Independence by Chitra Divakaruni, and he's also leading the discussion. So I'm going to sit back and relax and just pull a few buttons here and there. And over to you, Brian. I'm happy you're doing it. The entire novel and the discussion is in good hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Savia. I'd like to place on record my gratitude to the Margao Book Club. It's been a wonderful journey where we have such fine conversations about so many books which are generated by or suggested by the members of the club. I think it's a conversation that we need to have, and welcome to all the people here this evening. I have often seen Chitra's books in the bookstores, but I have never dared to pick it up. And when I was pushed to, decide on a novel for this meeting, I said, why not? And it was just staring at me in the face. And given the fact that I'm teaching partition literature this semester, there was no way I was going to sort of deny this book its rightful place this evening. But the line that really leapt out of the book was by Amrita Pritam. There are many stories which are not on paper. They are written on the minds and bodies of women. I felt that this was so true, particularly when we are excavating partition documents and partition literature, if only to begin to understand what happened at that time. I think we are already always looking at mainstream narratives of partition, and there is so much marginalization, as Savia put there, and Lena made this observation about the Sindhi community, that we still have miles to go before we sleep. There are so many communities that we need to look at and how they were affected by partition. And as the discussion went on to a place called home, I was reminded of a very beautiful line at the end of the novel where Priya tells Amit, because she knows that he's not going to make it. And in his delirium, he says, are we home? They are actually on the boat. They are on the Ichamati River. They have not really reached home. And Priya replies in a sentence which lifts this book to a different level. I mean, almost to the level of Sufism. And she says, I am here, we are home. She says, I am here, we are home. Isn't it? And that really takes it away from me, because, you may not be accepted anywhere, but when you're accepted in the eyes of the beloved, that is home for you. And I like to keep that with me. And with that preface,
Very nice.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll just take you through a few, let's say, points where we can enrich our conversation with. We have heard about Chitra and how she is such a prolific writer. She was born in 1956, and she was born in Kolkata. But she straddles continents, as we might say, because she's now settled in Houston, where she conducts a creative writing program at the University of Houston. I like the way she has dabbled in so many genres, though she first came to our attention putting out 2 collections of verse. But since then, she has brought out 21 books. And of them, we've got poetry, we've got novels, and we've got short stories. Her kind of domain areas keep proliferating, and she's very much into revisionist history. And that is something that is so important today when everybody thinks of revising things nowadays. We need to understand what to revise and what is the purpose of revising things. two things, two books that come to mind: Forests of Enchantment, which is a retelling of the Ramayana from the point of view of Sita, and The Palace of Illusions, which is a retelling of the Mahabharata from the point of view of Panchali. It is so, let's say, fortunate to have Leena here, who has actually met the author at the Jaipur Literary Festival. So you can bring the winds of Rajasthan to our table here. Yes.
I mean, you could transport our book club there. It was such
Yes.
a wonderful experience.
Absolutely. I've traveled in Rajasthan. I've written poetry in Rajasthan. So it's
lovely.
beautiful to have you here. I think Chitra is doing something very important because she is giving a voice to the voiceless. And this book is particularly, let's say, close to my heart, which is independence, is because it's not about West Pakistan, it's about East Bengal and East Pakistan. Mostly partition stories are about the West, but this is about the East. And I want to sort of show you this book that we have. I think it's looking all upside down in the camera, but it's called what is it? Partition Stories, an Unclosed Chapter. Okay,
Bengal Partition Stories.
Partition Stories, an Unclosed Chapter. It's a big tome, and it's got a lot of stories, but focusing only on East and West Pakistan, where there's been so much of upheaval and so much of pain. I don't know whether some of you have read the blog which I have written for this book, but it's very interesting that I find this novel very finely layered, because at the one level you have the plot moving, and at the deep structure level you have the political developments which actually frame these events in the novel. But there is no confusion, because there is a beautiful give and take between history and literature. As I put, one of the conversation points today was narrating the nation. To what extent does this novel, Independence, narrate, the independence of India? Of course, one of the main political leaders is Gandhiji, and I was happy to see the way I grew in my knowledge of Gandhi, and reading up so many documents, many of which I provided links to in the blog, have taken me on a journey which would have never been possible without Savia and without the Margao Book Club. I really salute this effort. And if I'm a better teacher today for partition literature, it is also because, I've had the opportunity to expound this book, and because we spend time to talk about it. I want to briefly look at or just touch upon the discussion points, because I want to hear what y'all all have to say also about the book. I also said that, if you could read a page or 60 seconds of, a section that you like, it will bring a greater depth to this novel, because I don't want to seriously monopolize this conversation. One thing that helped me in this novel is the soundtrack. I've been to Kolkata. I've been to, yes, Park Circus. And, it's only when you listen to the songs in Bangla that you are in Kolkata. You feel that you're there at Beltala and going in that tram. And you are in the land of the poets and the writers of the day, where actually anything can happen anytime. It's so dynamic. It's so... it's sometimes so chaotic. But these 10 songs are so finely curated by Divakaruni that each song has a purpose to be in this novel. And why do they choose this song? I'll just choose one example, which is the first song that is on page 19. Yeah. Nithuru hai ekaro chubalo. And it says, unless the incense is burned, it does not pour out its fragrance. I choose this quotation or this Robindra Sangit because it starts the novel and it ends the novel. In some way, Divakaruni seems to say that, look, I'm presenting two characters which are actually prototypes of two people in the world. One is this Zamindar, Santosh. He has everything that he needs, okay, in the world. He's got fields, he's got money, he's got affluence, he's got prestige. And there is this teacher, not teacher, doctor.
Doctor.
Yeah. What is his name? Nabakumar.
Nabo. And
Yeah, Nabo. He calls him Nabo.
yeah.
They are actually very similar but very different. They have accompanied, I don't know whether he, but I think it was Abdullah who accompanied Nabakumar for the Salt March. But in Santosh and Nabakumar, there is a polarity where Santosh is happy in his power and pelf, but it is Nabakumar who crosses the border, crosses this space of violence and gets killed. So he knows this is coming to him with the the tide turning in Kolkata. And again, he says, until incense is burnt, it does not pour out its fragrance. Unless you sacrifice yourself, you will not bring change. And when you go to the end of the novel, you realize both in the beginning and the end that whenever the song is sung, Santosh is restless because this song is the voice of conscience. This is him saying that, this is Nabakumar saying that, look, I need to help these people. And there is a reference to the Calcutta, the famine in Calcutta also a few years back. So he's very Marxist in that way because he wants to do something for the people, but not Santosh. In his own circle, Santosh helps these three daughters to, especially Priya, but they
He
help
also is a benefactor for Nabo.
Yeah.
He's also a benefactor. He helps him set up the clinic, extend the clinic, things like that. So he's kind of a benefactor there too. But then he's a zamindar, right? And that's the difference.
Yes.
So you can't take the zamindari away from the zamindar.
Yeah. I was, I mean, it's absolutely true what you said, but I was very intrigued by the sentence that both the times the writer has thought it fit to say, in the first instance, not that one Somnath groans, it is so depressing.
Depressing. Yeah.
So when you throw poverty in the face of people, there are people who don't like it because, they are privileged. So this is something that stays with us in the novel. And the second thing is the sleepwalking episode really,
I was like,
it was just out of this world.
Yeah.
Especially that line at the end where they say, look, the strange and unfortunate women of the Ganguly family. I mean, in that sentence, you have a kind of a crystallization of how society excludes women, how they try to, label and let's say things about people and try to marginalize them. My PhD was on women and insanity. So, this kind of is the home turf when I read it. And
but the marginalization of the Bengal widows is a very long standing tradition. The Bengal widows probably had, I mean, those Bengal women are so strong, are always seen, they always they worship Durga, they look at Shakti and all that stuff. But the marginalization of the Bengal widows has always been so big. I mean, they've been sent out. If you look at Mathura and all that, they are totally, they're all of them Bengal widows. 80-90% of them are Bengal widows. And obviously that has been something that that community just doesn't it's not very easy for them to accept, is because the concept of sindur khela, all the symbols of being married are so big in their society that they for them being a widow is like the biggest misfortune.
Yes.
So it is, I feel that it's a very cultural, it's a reflection of their culture, and hence it's difficult for women to rise out of that, out of that mold,
That mindset, yeah.
that mindset, that mold,
Yeah.
that social expectation from them.
Actually, the ostracism should extend only to Bina because the other three have not made their lives yet.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
but this generalization is so dangerous.
Yeah.
That is what really struck me. Strange and unfortunate women. How do you know that it's unfortunate? They've not made their lives yet.
Yeah.
So this judging, this judgmental attitude is something that is very worrisome. The quilt making, the making of the kantha is very beautiful because here the author, to use Savia's term, gives agency to Bina to stand on their own. They don't have to depend on anybody else, and they persevere towards doing all these things despite so many hardships. And in the epilogue, you find that uh, the wheel has come full circle, and they're doing pretty well for themselves. So I think on this note, I would like to throw the house open for discussion and to take it anywhere that you'd like to. Over to y'all, and I'm listening.
Marion or Lena?
I think let Marian's turn.
Marion?
Okay, because of my voice, I will give a very short statement. Actually, I thank you very, very much for choosing this book. This is one of the best books I ever read in my whole life. And it, from the way of telling the story, it reminds me to one of my very favorite authors, Isabel Allende, who combines so nicely the personal stories with the political background, and also she's telling the story so much interesting. I really couldn't stop reading. And this is a very good sign for a book. And I am so much impressed how she how to say in English? So on one side, you have the independence of the country and the nation. And on the other side, you have the independence of these women who really, maybe it was not their own choice, besides Priya, maybe, but after the death of her father, it opens also a possibility, or not only the possibility, also the necessity of develop themselves and be independent. And even the mother, I think she had the most difficulties to develop herself. No? Because maybe this was Dina was telling, because of the widow state of especially in this time. I think this must be very tough, and the way all the neighbors are reacting to them, I was really very shocked. Because normally people helping each other in this country, so I was really shocked to see that everybody took the money back and didn't support them also. So I really liked the development of the women, and also I think it was Priya when she when the father died and they burned the body, that she refused that the male person
Yes.
burn
them.
All of them do it together.
Yeah. So I think this was already a very, also in this time, extraordinary act of independence. And I liked also the very much the very supporting male characters. And I think without them, it would be nearly impossible for them to develop this independence, because it needs in a male society, it needs also the support of the males. So I think this is what I wanted to say. I'm very impressed of the story, and I was really deeply touched by the story.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm going to go in briefly. I haven't read the book because without having a hard copy, I find it very difficult. I have a soft copy, but I started the book and I said, oh my God, this is getting into one of those partition stories, Satranj ke Khiladi, and the playing of chess. It starts off with chess. Often then it had me thinking, how does a Goan respond to partition stories? I mean, I'm half Goan, half Sindhi because my husband is Sindhi and I know enough about the partition. Yeah, but really speaking, for Goans, partition has never been a story which has created memories in our mind. For us, we were blissfully like under Portuguese colonial rule at that time. I never remember my parents ever bringing in the issue of partition, though it was such a cataclysmic event for the rest of India. I mean, people were migrating right up to Belgaum and Goa also. Bombay had such a huge exodus of people, pouring in. Delhi, huge. North India, huge. But somehow we just remained very quarantined from it. And I often wondered, when we teach partition literature, of course, our last to last book, Tomb of Sand, has been on partition. And I thoroughly enjoyed that book. But somehow when it started off with this playing of chess, I was finding the motifs all too familiar of a partition story, of a very North Indian setting. And I didn't have the appetite for another partition story. So I said, I'll be there, but I wanted to raise this point that how does a Goan respond to? I mean, I'm taking a very narrow view, but it's an important view because we are talking of it from our local standard, right? We live in Goa. So I often wondered what is the response, and Brian would be the best to answer this because I think he teaches partition literature to Goan students in a girls' college. Yeah. Thank you. And I'm very sorry, Brian. I will borrow one of your hard copies and go through the book pronto. But, unless
You can have mine.
Yeah, thank you. I've been downsizing my library. So unless I really want to keep the book for another 10 years, which is going to be my shelf life, I think, I'm not buying any other books. Yeah, thank you. Lena, over to you. Yeah, and Brian.
So many interesting thoughts that you've thrown in this.
Lena, I'll just respond to Savia.
Yeah, please. That's a good
Because
point. Yeah.
it's something so deep, and I have these thoughts at the tip of my tongue. I want to thank you so specially for the honesty with which you spoke, Savia. It's not easy to read a book, seriously, with all the commitments that we have. But you said that you prefer the hard copy and you would read it sometime. But whether you read it or not, it's important to be at a Zoom call. I mean, when the book club calls you to be there. So thank you so much for being truthful about it. We really appreciate it because ultimately literature is about honesty.
Yeah, and I like to put all those who have excuses to shame. I haven't read the book, I'm there.
I knew there was, something lurking in the
Agenda to it.
background. Okay.
Yeah, I have a very competitive outlook to book clubs. I have to read the book, even if it means I have to stay up the whole night, which really happens. But I don't know. It's a psyche. It's like you get an assignment, you got to finish the assignment. How do you finish the assignment? You read. You just go through it. It's one of those things. But this book was very easy to read. It was an extremely easy read, Savia. So when you actually get down to it, it's going to take you 24 hours to get through this book. But of course, Brian's discussion has taken this book to another level. So, when we read it, we would not have appreciated all those things unless Brian walked us through it the way he did, especially in terms of saying, look at how the songs and how they have been picked. Now, I saw the songs, but I never looked at it the way he looked at it. So, which is very nice. So now I'm going to go back and look at it from that point. I also thought, Brian, I thought the book, when I started reading it, I thought, she's such a good storyteller. So, it's like she tells story really well. So when a lot of times when I read literature, I look at craft, I look at like Isabella Allende, you just see the craft, you see the twists and turns, you see the magnificence of it. So I always try, when I'm reading a book now, when you read so many books, I have a lot of time, so I read a lot of books. So what happens is then you start looking at craft and you start thinking, what's special about this book? And this was such an easy read that it was difficult to say what's special about this book. But when you put that point about Amrita Pritam's point about, you to be in, how do you listen to the same stories from a woman's mind or a woman's body? And it gives you a totally different outlook. And I think that's what this book has done. And that's why it's so cool that it's actually looked at partition from the point of a woman's body and mind. And even being a woman, you had to bring that to me during this discussion. So that was another great learning, Brian. Thank you for that. But just going back to the book, I think it's very clever. She always writes clever. Her flow is brilliant. I mean, she just writes. She has such a poetic way of writing. You can feel Bengal. I was married to a Bengali, not the best part of my life, but having said that, she brings Bengal to you, and Bengal's really rich and diverse, and it has this intellect, or it has also a lot of pseudo intellectuals, but there's also a lot of appreciation to poetry, music. She brings all that, she brings all that, the importance of the food, the importance of everything. She really weaves it beautifully. But you had asked me to put, you had asked us to pick up one passage that we liked, and I found this very even I live outside India, and whenever I come in, there is a certain exhilaration when I come into India, or when I think of India, all its crap things aside, I feel exhilarated here. I see my mother; she feels exhilarated here. So this is a very interesting one, and I think this kind of really spoke to me. So she said, and when Priya is coming back, and this is on page 206, when she's coming back to India, it's a very tough time when she's coming back. She knows what's happened to her mother and sister. And then she says, at last the Calcutta docks loom. Faithful Munshiji waits. This time, so much is different. Seeing it even beleaguered, Priya feels a small, fierce joy. The officials are Indian. Custom police, army, port supervisors, they all hold their heads higher. Their eyes shine brighter. They're working in their own country for their own Bharat. Yes, in places so it just shows the pride of being an Indian. And I think a lot of us, we see, I mean, I live in Singapore, it can't be more perfect than that. But when I come to India, there is still a sense of pride, a sense of ownership, a sense of being a part of this huge ecosystem. And to know we are free, we are there, we are a young democracy, and we're going to create something great. And the whole thing's going to come back to its greatness at some point. It's always a hope. And there's an Indianness that you can't kind of get rid of. And I think that even though in her worst time, she still feels that, she feels that joy in that moment. And I thought that was very powerful and very nicely captured by Chitra. And there are many such moments, of course.
Thank you so much, Lena. You really put it down so well, and I'm honored to have been able to, pry open certain routes of inquiry into this novel. Like you said, it is so suave. You wouldn't know that it is so complex and so profound. There's so much happening in this novel, but you think Chitra is writing so effortlessly,
Yeah.
and everything just comes, with a narrative structure, and everything is in the right place at the right time. I think this is a good time to also speak about the way each chapter is titled by the name of the character. That is so unusual. So
Yeah.
you'll have a chapter titled Priya, you'll have a chapter
And
titled.
repetitive.
Yes, yes. And it's a kind of a cycle, so that she has to see she doesn't leave out anybody anywhere. And sometimes you think that this is no, this is not going to work as, I mean, as an act of writing, but it does somewhere, because once it starts with the name of a character, after the second or third paragraph, you actually forget what that chapter is titled, because there's so much happening in that chapter. Which also brings me to one of the books she has written, The Mistress of Spices, where every chapter is named after a certain spice. I wonder whether y'all have read it.
I read the book, but long time ago.
Yeah,
Long time ago.
yeah,
Yeah.
this one.
One of
Yeah.
her, I think this is one of her first books and was
Yes,
really
yes,
interesting. But
yeah.
90s, no?
just
Yeah.
There's a film, I think, isn't it? There's also one film about this book.
so just a quick point
Right.
on that. I feel she also partitions within the partition. She partitions through Deepa, Priya, and Jamini. The different partition, the East Bengal partition story, what's happening here, what's happening in the middle. So she also partitions, and every time when you go from one character to the other, you're going to a different place and a different situation. So she's partitioning continuously.
So that really is an amazing insight. Thank you. Uh, and that last scene where they go across to East Bengal and spirit away
Deepa.
Aliyah, this side is simply wow. I've actually tried to look at some of the riverine formations and seeing where the Ichamati actually runs. And that map in the blog post shows the river and how it skirts the, let's say, the area of Khulna. That's the one at the bottom, which they're talking about. Um, Everything is so vivid over there. It's so cinematographic. Like you almost think that one shot after another. I think this has to be made into a film,
Yeah,
actually.
I think all her books feel like a cinema, like a movie
Yes,
story. As if they're
yes,
Very
scripted for
graphic
that.
descriptions.
Very
yes.
graphic. But you know what's interesting? I have seen that crossing because
Okay,
that's where you have the border police, whatever the border security force and everything, and there's a constant smuggling of cows across.
okay.
Constant. So it's a big smug. It's like, and it's so easy. It's so
Smuggling
narrow. You can
corridor.
literally see East Bengal there. It's really easy.
And it's very interesting that at some point, all the partitions actually fall, all the pardas fall, because it's love that keeps the family together. It doesn't matter what religion you belong to, but all that has to, be kept to one side. Even though you're wearing, the burqa, you are just using that as a kind of a subterfuge to help your sister to cross the border. So it's amazing how, at one level, people can be so rigid about communities and religious affiliations. And on the other hand, the sisters are not particularly religious. They understand the complexities of what it means to marry or be with Raza. Deepa knows that very well. But though they're terrified by what religion can do, they kind of try to keep above being submerged by it.
Yeah. true.
I mean, no one would have.
Humanity kind of takes over.
Yes, and that's what I like to take back about this novel is that the sisters are showing us that it's love that will prevail, not violence. They've never been violent with anybody. They've only used their intellect and their intelligence to make the world a better place, and that's, I think, what they've got from their father and maybe their mother, who has of course been a little uh, let's say bitter after Nabakumar's death.
Yeah. But Beena's character is something I couldn't unravel really well. I mean, she seems so stoic, so here and not here, and then here again, and then not here again, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It was a difficult character to unravel.
Actually, since you mentioned that, some things are difficult to reconcile because after that sleepwalking scene, you don't think she will actually come back, because she's been so badly scarred by the violent death of her father. And you think that if she continued that slide, it would have been more realistic for the novel.
Yeah.
But the fact that she bounces back sometimes is difficult to accept. And the fact she appears in the epilogue also looking very happy makes you think that it's stretching things a little bit too far.
But they also maybe sometimes it shows how resilient women
Yeah.
are, because at the end of the day, every time she bounces back, it's when there is a need for one of the daughters. Like when Jamini gives up all hope, she bounces back and she kind of talks to Amit. She tries to figure out how to fix her life. And I think that gives her strength and as she says, the only time she smiled was when Jamini said that you saved my life. Everybody was trying to talk to her,
Yes.
but she didn't respond. But when Jamini said to her that mom, you saved my life, was the only time she could smile and responded. Right. So it kind of shows that the strength comes out when she has a purpose more than other times, which is very true for all women. We suddenly become so strong when there is adversity, or when things are not going right, and then we feel we got to hold everything together. And
She's
right,
also
Samia?
she's also the one who
Absolutely.
speaks during the riots and saves them, no? In
Yeah.
Calcutta. He
Yeah.
stands up and says that, look, we are Hindus, let us
Yeah.
pass, and we want
Yeah.
to go and meet
Yeah.
my husband. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's so shows the strength just comes out, when there is a need for the family, and when there is otherwise they take the background or they stay in the back end. And
Regarding this teaching partition to students, it's, as I said, very difficult because they have no clue about what is happening even in Goa, than what can be expected about what is happening outside Goa. The level of awareness is pretty much wanting, and students of literature are expected to have a very heightened sensibility, and we try to work at that. So when we're talking about partition, I would think that like any other literature, any other culture that we as teachers try to mediate to students, we just handle partition with a little more sensitivity because we have people from all communities in the classroom. And it's very important to use the right words when you're talking about
Yeah,
these
sure.
novels, no?
Yeah.
Which brings me to the point that there are a lot of things in this novel, particularly towards the latter part, which the author doesn't really speak about but only suggests. Now, Gandhi's assassination is something that's so huge, but it's pretty downplayed, I felt. Though the entire substructure of the novel is about him, once he actually is put away, uh, maybe the choice is not correct. It is Sarojini Naidu says it was unfortunate and we have to honor his name by keeping his actions alive. But it doesn't. It's not in your face that this has happened. He never uses the word assassination.
No.
Never.
Same thing with Nehru, if you notice.
Yes.
You saw that Pandit
Yes.
was very eloquent in English, and it'll be interesting to see what he has to say. And then his speeches in English, and
Yes.
it was very cleverly kind of
Yes.
juxtaposed there. And I think that also, I noticed that. And another interesting part was the Jinnah part, that how independence, they rushed the independence by 10 months because Jinnah was already suffering and was going to die. So that's a very interesting, 10 months later, the story would have been totally different.
Yeah.
Yes.
The British didn't want that, right? They really wanted to make sure that we were cut into different parts.
And
But I think so it was very, she really plays that, she takes that liberty and puts that in, which is very interesting. I agree with you. I love those pieces. I love those parts where she does that.
In fact,
Give
the entire novel propels itself from a direct action day, which is actually Jinnah's call to the Muslims to actually take direct action.
to be
That is
violent.
so
We
horrifying,
didn't
you
know.
know.
We
Take life
didn't know
in-
that, right?
Yeah.
And even about that poet, the poet, the East Bengal poet, who is very prolific in his work, which Deepa sings. I thought that was very interesting. I'm going to check him out. Nazrullah, yeah, I didn't know about
Nazrul
that.
Git, yes.
Yeah, and that was, I thought, very interesting. And was one more point I wanted to make to you. So, but if you look at partition, if you look at the partition stories from North India versus partition stories from Bengal and the aftermath of it, you'll see they're very different because of the nature of the people. So the Bengalis, when they went through partition and when they had to move, even in the 70s, when they had to leave East Bengal, Bangladesh, and come to India and all, they had a very, oh my God, it's all lost kind of an attitude. Whereas if you look at North Indian partition and you look at the Punjabis and you look at the North Indian race, they were like, okay, we're rebuilding, and they became such successful communities. So it's very interesting to look at these two very differently. There was a very good TV series I remember seeing as a child called Bunyad, which talks about partition which talks about what happened or the families in those times. But I will send you the name of this other author who also launched her book at the Lit Fest, and she's talked about Punjabi partition, and maybe nice to kind of compare the two and see how they have. I haven't read it, but I'll also read it from that partition point of view now.
I was thinking about William Dalrymple and his City of Jinns, where he describes, this lady who's she's the, what is it called? How the one who gives her room on rent to William Dalrymple and his wife, and they are actually refugees who have come in from Punjab, and how they build their lives in Delhi, and she becomes an affluent person, giving classes to women to have better manners and to have better social skills. So yes, that's a very good point that you made. And when I want to revisit this aspect of music, you're talking about the music of East Bengal, is called Nazrul Geet. So the Nazrul Geet and the Robindra Sangeet, which are actually two strands of two nations, they actually hold the peace between the countries.
Beautifully said. Yeah.
है ना? तो उसमें जो है, when this guy Mujibur Rahman comes to East Bengal and Deepa sings for him, you know what he says? He says, "Will someone sing Tagore for me?"
Yeah, that's true.
And that's a very defining moment.
Yeah.
That Mujibur Rahman, the architect of Bangladesh, wants to listen to Tagore.
Tagore, yeah. But that also reflects that whole cultural immersion of the Bengalis. You will see, if you go to Iran, again, that's another place where the poets, they will speak about their poets, they'll talk about poetry, they'll go to the mausoleum of the poets. It's a very big thing. The poets are a very big, they're like superstars, right?
Yes.
And I think Bengalis in that sense also have these superstars in Rabindranath
Yes.
Tagore, in Swami Vivekanand, and some more of them.
And
And they really kind of think that they derive all their grandiose from these people, being from the land of these high thinkers. And of course, we can't neglect the fact that if you look at percentage of authors, poets, and all these, they all come from Bengal. Like,
yeah.
it's really very a very
And
high percentage comes from there. You
and if
look
you
at
stretch,
Arundhati Roy, you look at all of these people. It's just like incredible the number of Bengalis who are in this space.
yeah. And if
Yeah.
you stretch that metaphor a little further, if you look at the final scene when Deepa is spirited away to Kolkata, you know what actually gives them that lead time to use the subterfuge and change it into the burqa? It is the song.
Mm.
Deepa is singing to keep the military
The
at
people
bay.
have, yeah.
So her song is actually lifting them out of that predicament.
Wow.
That is,
It's
something
so
that,
strong, right? It's so
ha,
strong.
ha. And then what, what Jamini does, no? She
Yeah.
said, you go, you escape, I will continue singing, they'll not know the difference.
Yeah.
It is such an amazing ploy, and you realize that song has given them a
Freedom.
sleep because the song keeps singing.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
you
thank
have
you.
whetted my appetite enough. I'm going to read the book now. Marian,
Thank you.
can you keep it at the shop, at the restaurant? Your book? I'll just
Actually,
follow.
Kavya, we closed the restaurant.
Okay, okay.
I can, also, I don't know if I'm well next week. Otherwise, I can come to the Zalo beach. If not, you can pick it up from my home. But I shifted now around the corner. I'm other side from Danda now.
Okay, okay. I'll do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss your March meeting, Savia, which I'm feeling sad about.
Yeah.
But I'll be back June, July, August. So
Okay, lovely. We'll meet you then. But
yeah.
look at this. I'm so upset with every little anyway, we had a lovely discussion. Those who missed it, isn't it, Brian? And thank you so
Totally.
much for this wonderful animated discussion. I think both of you, Lena and Brian, of course, led the discussion, but Lena made such interesting interventions that, she held the meeting. And Lena, we look forward to your presence again. Do
Yeah,
come.
I mean, Zoom I can very easily do. I mean, it's not a problem. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And take care. And next book, I think, let's think about it. I'll get somebody else to suggest. It should be a lighter book so that we can just chill on the beach and have a cake and have some other things and relax. Okay. Lena, when are you leaving tomorrow?
I'm leaving on the 28th in the evening.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm right now doing a detox. It's horrible.
Okay.
Horrible, to say the least. Good, Brian, you don't have to deal with these things.
I know, Brian's like endowed in many ways.
Yeah.
So
But such a pleasure meeting everybody. And Savia, we have to think about this in-person thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll meet you before you go. I've been having
Yes.
a slew of guests, so it's
Yeah.
kept me occupied, but I'll be free on Monday, from Monday, so I'll connect and meet up.
Take care, Savia.
Okay.
Lots of love.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Brian.
Savia.
Thanks, Marian. Lovely
Marian,
meeting.
lovely.
Would love to have heard more about your restaurant, but one day we shall chat about it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.